This is A to Z with Mark Zinno, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Good afternoon. Welcome to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, where today I tell you it was supposed to be easy. Welcome in. We are live on this Friday post-NFL draft, and, well, we are all sort of just reacting here on this Friday to what the Falcons did at number 8 overall. I'll get to that in just a moment. Maria Martin, my friend from 11 Alive, is going to join us. We actually pre-recorded last night right after the draft because it was best for her schedule. So you'll hear that coming up next. We reacted to the draft and Ronald Acuna back with the Atlanta Braves. We've got a lot to do here on this Friday. Appreciate you starting your Friday with us here on A to Z and making Locked On Sports Atlanta part of your everyday sports listen. So yesterday on the show, I kind of explained to you how things were going to go, right? And to my credit, I don't want to break my arm patting myself on the back here, but to my credit, I talked about what was going to be available at number 8 for the Falcons. Because if it wasn't one of the 3 DNs, who all 3 were taken, and it wasn't one of the 2 corners, who both of them were taken, then one of the 3 offensive linemen was going to be there for them to take. And that was okay with me. Charles Cross from Mississippi State was the offensive lineman who was there. Now, all 3 DNs were gone. And that meant Jermaine Johnson was the next best defensive end. And so as they were sitting there, and as the draft was unfolding, I actually tweeted out last night, and I did it sort of sarcastically, that Charles Cross and Jermaine Johnson were both going to be there at 8. My guess is the Falcons will stupidly take a wide receiver. Oh, boy, sometimes it sucks being right. And they did. And Drake London is the guy. Now, again, I told you guys this entire week leading up to it. I said it last week leading up to the draft, how much I hated the idea of taking a wide receiver. My puke factor was 0. And I don't get a good feeling about the process. That's what this is about. It's not about whether Drake London is going to be a good wide receiver. I think he's talented. Hell, I told people and all the betting shows that I do, Drake London was going to be the first wide receiver off the board. Take it. Take the bet. He's absolutely going to be the first wide receiver off the board. I was right. And he was. Because big-bodied wide receivers like him weren't easily, found in this draft. He is just a large human being. He's got the body type of Mike Evans in the NFL. 6'4", 220 pounds, just a matchup nightmare from a size standpoint to a lot of teams. And we talked about how much Arthur Smith had A.J. Brown when he was in Tennessee, and that type of big-body wide receiver was tough. Not the fastest guy, but that's okay. And I get it, the red zone targets, and I get what Arthur Smith wants to create. I do. I get the logic of Drake London being their pick. I can buy the logic. But to me, I can't buy into the process of the rebuild. It's just backwards at this point. You don't have anybody to block. You don't have a running game to set up the pass. And you don't have a long-term solution at quarterback that's going to be throwing Drake London the ball. That's the part that bothers me. It seems like things went out of step here. I don't doubt that wide receiver was a need. My good friend Mike Rothstein from ESPN.com from the Perch Podcast said it was the second biggest need on the team. I tend to disagree. I don't think it was the second biggest need. I think that the biggest needs were in the trenches. Either somebody who can protect the quarterback or get to the quarterback. Look at one of the worst teams in the NFL, the New York Giants. What did they do with their 2 first-round picks? Go get somebody who can get to the quarterback in Kayvon Thibodeau and somebody who could protect the quarterback in Evan Neal. I mean, again, it's not about doing what other teams think you should do or fans think you should do. There is a process to a rebuild. And if you weren't going to take the quarterback, which I get and I understand, there were other pieces there to take other than Drake London at 8 overall. And they tried to sell us on it last night. And I just, it's hard for me to buy in. I'm not saying he wasn't the best player available. I'm not saying he's not the best wide receiver in this draft. I'm not saying any of those things. What I'm questioning here is the process. Because if you had sat down with Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith and asked them, how do you construct a roster before they had taken over the Falcons? I guarantee you they both would have said, well, you need to get your quarterback fixed. Okay, then do that. Then after that, you need to get, people who can protect the quarterback and build in the trenches and go get pass rushers and corners. Like the four most important positions on the football field by a large margin. On the offense, the two most important are quarterback and left tackle. And on defense, the two most important are edge rusher, pass rusher, and cornerback. There were a lot of those guys available that you passed on for a wide receiver. That's the part that bothers me. I'm over being mad about the pick. I genuinely am. It's Friday. I'm over being mad about the pick. And as I said multiple times, guys, this is about the totality of the draft. And coming up later, we'll get into the options for the Falcons on day 2 and day 3 of the draft and what they can do. And so I stick to that it is still about the totality of the NFL draft. It's still about what they're going to do with the entirety of all 7 rounds of this draft and how they're going to get players, because they need players everywhere. Can they still find a viable defensive end? Sure. But when first rounders make up nearly 30% of starters in the NFL, it's really important that you get that first rounder to be an impact guy. Drake London can only be an impact guy as much as Marcus Mariota can find him and get him the ball. And that's as much as the offensive line can protect Mariota to be able to throw him the ball. Now, taking a pass rusher doesn't make the offense any better, but I also didn't waste. I don't want to say waste. That's not the right word. I also didn't use a first-round pick on somebody whose sole job is just to catch the ball from the quarterback. That's the problem. Again, I'm over it. I'm not going to be mad. I do not agree that this was the right move from a process standpoint. You want to sell me on Drake London as a pick that makes sense and that he was part of a need and that he's in the red zone. I get the logic of all of it. I just don't agree that it was the right step in the process. And oh, by the way, I'll add one more thing, because there is this, and last night was emblematic of this, right? Like wide receivers, dead wrong on thinking there were going to be under 6.5 wide receivers in this draft in the first round. They flew off the board fast. The Falcons actually started the run. And there is this notion now in the NFL, and this is happening, so pay attention to it, but wide receivers are now becoming the second highest paid position in the NFL behind quarterback. And teams don't want to pay exorbitant salaries to wide receivers. Hence why the Ravens dumped Marquise Brown, the Titans dumped A.J. Brown, because all of these guys are going to want and command high-level, high-dollar salaries that are going to eat up part of your cap. And what teams realize is that wide receivers, while important, to give them that percentage of your salary cap, comparatively speaking, to quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, defensive back / cornerback, is not the most useful way to allocate your cap percentages. They know that. They know that. Look at the teams that have been winning Super Bowls. Did the Rams have a high-priced, high-paid wide receiver? No, that wasn't Odell Beckham Jr. The Rams didn't pay him. They got the tail end of his salary after he had been moved twice. Okay, he wasn't high-priced. They didn't have a high-priced wide receiver. Certainly wasn't Cooper Kupp. Did the Chiefs have a high-priced wide receiver when they won the Super Bowl? Nope, because Tyreek Hill hadn't gotten paid yet. I mean, it's just not a very good use of your cap when there are other things around. So there is this desire for teams to get talented wide receivers, keep them cheap, keep them young, and get that 5th year of control. And part of the reason why the Falcons probably went that way. And I get that. But is that 5th year of control really going to matter? Because Who knows where you're going to be at? That's assuming you're getting out of the rebuild in 3 years. And remember, folks, this is year 0 of the rebuild. This year doesn't count. So you're wasting a year of Drake London on a year that you know you cannot win, that he cannot truly be the impact that you want a first-round pick to be because you can't do anything this year because you don't have a roster good enough. Next year will be year 1, and he'll already be on year 2 of his contract. And then, oh, by the way, you're likely changing quarterbacks next year or the year after. That's the other biggest reason why none of this makes sense. You're going to waste 2 years of him in years you can't be competitive, and then you're changing quarterbacks on him, and there's no guarantee that any value he brings at that point in time is going to be able to be maximized with a young new quarterback if that's the road you're going down. There's a lot of question marks around it, and that to me, again, is why the process is backwards, and that's troublesome for me. That's why I have an issue with this pick. Has nothing to do with Drake London over anybody else per se. It has everything to do with the process of rebuilding this team. And I don't know, at this point in time, I don't feel good about their process and the order in which they're rebuilding this franchise. And that's really why it was supposed to be easier. It really was. All right, coming up next, Maria Martin of 11 Alive joined me last night right after the draft. We talked about the Falcons, the Georgia Bulldogs, and Ronald Acuna returning to the Braves lineup. That's next right here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, make sure you search Locked On Sports Atlanta.